So I did my presentation on Cyrus McCormick's Mechanical Reaper. Cyrus McCormick created the first mechanical reaper in 1831 in Virginia, United States. His father Robert had designed the idea but could never get it to function. With his father's permission, Cyrus had the reaper patented in 1834. Created as a faster way to harvest wheat, the mechanical reaper could harvest roughly an acre an hour, a task that would take a day by hand. Because of the mechanical reaper, the production of wheat increased from 4 bushels per capita to 10. The reaper is driven by 2 horses, with the person riding on the machine. A reel is made from the axle of the wheel to turn the blades. There is a platform on the right side of the machine, so when the blades cut the wheat, it piles onto the platform and is all unloaded at once, making the harvest collection less tedious as well. There was no documented failures of the reaper. The mechanical advantage of the reaper is approximately 2. The horses pulling the machine allows the wheels to turn. A reel connects the wheel axle to the rod that have the blades attached to them. The distance of the blade is greater than the radius of the wheel. The mechanical advantage may vary depending on the size of the wheel, the size of the blades, and the relationship between the wheel axle and blade rod. The first principle I looked at was the leverage principle. So as you can see on the picture, the rider is sitting on a seat that is supported by a horizontal beam, and that seat for the reaper fails this principle because there's only a horizontal beam supporting the seat. So, if there was more leverage added to the seat, the stress would be more uniformly distributed. So the second principle that we look at is the metal removal principle. So as you could see, the brushes brush against the platform, and that creates a bending force on each of those individual brushes. The stress flows upwards and is distributed evenly amongst the arm. And so when there's less of those kind of material that's making contact with the platform, there's going to be less stress induced overall amongst the arm. The third principle that I looked at was the uniform size principle. The size of the individual brushes are uniform on the arm blade. So when they each come into contact with the platform, they each share the distributed bending moment. So when we start looking at the joint principles, we could first look at the brushes as an example of there being a bad joint, like a bad jointing principle. The mating surface principle tells us that they would want a larger cross section between 2 parts that make contact, so that would better distribute the stress. And as you can see, each individual brush over here has a single point of contact, which would make it much more likely to be bending too much to a point of possible failure. So the last principle I looked at was the anti-buckling principle. The wheels and the spokes that support them are a good example of that. So when the wheel makes contact with the ground, it is in compression because it is carrying the weight of the reaper and the driver as well, and they're in normal force with the ground. So when that happens, the reason that they don't buckle is because they have spokes that add additional support. So that way, if there was maybe too much weight on the Reaper, there would not be any sort of buckling happening to the wheel, preventing the wheels from being bent and damaging the machine. So one possible design improvement that we could make to the mechanical Reaper would be by adding an additional support beam underneath the horizontal one that supports the seat up. And I believe that by doing so, it would better distribute the stress amongst the beams, so there would be no critical failure and the driver falling off. Another design improvement that could be made for better shape synthesis would be to improve on the mating surface principle. So instead of having brushes as the blades that would chop the grain and brush against the platform, it'd be better if there was just an arm that extended out without having any kind of protruding brushes. So that way the stress would be uniformly distributed when it is brushing against the platform,